Chris Adams with Body Slam the Competition. Welcome to week number 7. Yes, I said it correctly. We're 7 deep into the podcast episodes now. Along with me tonight is Mike Currents. He is my co-host, the trusty co-host, I would say. We kind of put this together at the last minute. In the last couple of days, we weren't going to do anything until after the New Year's, but had an opportunity we didn't want to pass up here. We're going to have an interview tonight with a promoter and booker named Herb Simmons. He's been in the business for quite some time now. And so, Mike, everything going okay with you? Christmas go okay?
We had a wonderful Festivus, Chris. It was great. The aluminum pole was in the corner. We had the airing of grievances. It was wonderful.
All right. Well, the Festivus for the rest of us is always a good occasion. I'm going to go ahead and send a signal here to Mr. Simmons to give us a call. Might take just a moment to get him through here. We've had some technical difficulties earlier due to weather in his area, so bear with me just a second here. Herb's been around for I think about 40 years in the business doing promoting and booking both, so he's been around a lot of big names in the past, a lot of good venues. Should be a good conversation we'll have here. Now, Mike, when's the last time you've been to an independent show?
Actually, it was about 3 or 4 months ago. Actually, longer than that. Probably 8 months ago, Chris.
All right, well, I got him. Looks like he's calling now. Hang on 1 second, please. Hello, Mr. Simmons. Are you there?
Fine, yes, I am.
Oh, hey, great to hear from you. This is Chris Adams with Body Slam Competition. I'm my co-host, Mike Currents, along with me here.
Hey, Chris, nice talking to you. Sorry it kind of got delayed there a little bit, but I'm out and about still, but I can do what I can do.
Hey, that's okay. I understand you got some weather situations going on in your area today, too, so I definitely understand that. We do appreciate, though, the time you're taking out to give us a call here. That means a great deal to us.
Oh, no problem. I've always got time to talk wrestling.
Well, that's what we're about here. Talking the wrestling is the biggest thing for us, man.
Well, that's me too. It has for 41 years for me, so.
Yeah, I was reading up on you a little bit earlier. Your name was referred to me by Douglas O'Shea, who's a friend of ours. Said he used to, of course, he used to be in the business himself a little bit, wrestling, and he brought your name up to us, and he was telling me about some of the things you've done in the past. I said, look him up. So I went ahead and looked you up and saw, I was like, wow, 40 years in the business, booking, promoting, pretty much been around everybody that's ever come through there. What are some of the biggest names you think you've had come through your area?
Oh, gosh. Over the 40 years, I mean, some of the mainstays I had was Bruiser Brody, Dick Murdoch, Crusher Blackwell, Luthez, never wrestled, but he actually was a special guest referee for me. By the time Lou had started doing that, he was out of the ring wrestling, but I'd bring him in quite frequently as a special guest referee. And him and my partner in crime, as I referred to him, Larry Matisek, who grew up under Sam Muchnick in the NWA days, were good friends. And Larry is the one who actually introduced me to Sam Muchnick, and then, of course, Sam introduced me to several of the guys over the years. But here recently, we've always tried to bring in the legends. So we've had Ted DiBiase, Luke Williams, the Bushwhacker, Coco Beware, One Man Gang, Dory Funk Jr. Has been in, Jerry Briscoe. So we kind of do the old with the new. We have a television program that's on every week on our cable channel, and we actually do our TV tapings, but then on that show we actually put an old classic tape from the old St. Louis wrestling that the Chase stays on there. So the fans get to see the old with the new, basically.
That's another thing you kind of led up to that there. Wrestling at the Chase. What was that like? I understand that's one of the big venues that all the wrestlers wanted to come through at one point in time.
Yeah, wrestling at the Chase actually started on television back in May of 1959, and it was at the Chase Park Plaza Hotel, which was the elite hotel in the St. Louis area back in those days. Some of your big stars, when they were in St. Louis performing, would stay at the Chase Park Plaza, and they would have this ballroom with the big chandelier in the middle of the room. And Sam Muchnick actually struck up a deal with the owners of the hotel, who owned the local television station, and they started running wrestling shows in this beautiful ballroom. We've actually, some of the oldest library tapes that we have go back to about 1962, and it shows the tables set up with the white tablecloths, and ladies would be there with their pearl necklaces on, and the gentlemen in their tuxedos. And here was this wrestling ring sitting underneath the chandelier, smoke-filled room, and gentlemen smoking their stogies, and you'd have Rip Hawk in the ring going against Buddy Rogers or Cowboy Bob Ellis. It was the place to be, what they used to say, the chase was the place.
That's awesome. Mike, you got a question for us?
Sure. Herb, I'm Mike. I'm Chris's co-host here. We had a little technical difficulty. I was lost in limbo there for a few minutes.
Okay.
What was it that initially drew you to the business?
Like all of us, I grew up a fan. I grew up in the housing projects in East St. Louis, Illinois, and a lot of fans, the ones that are still around, some may remember, but wrestling at the Chase used to come on a Wednesday night. It was on there for about a year on another local St. Louis channel before it went to Channel 11. And we had no air conditioning in the housing projects where I grew up at, so we would, my mother and sibling would drag the 13-inch black and white portable television outside and plug it in with the extension cord, and the neighbors would come around, and we'd sit there on a Wednesday night and watch wrestling at the Chase. And then there was a place in East St. Louis called the Social Center down at 9th and Summit Avenue. And it's kind of ironic I'm talking to you now. I'm about 2 blocks away from there as I'm driving down the road. But Luthez had his first match there. Pat O'Connor, Cowboy Bob Ellis. That was a place on the east side where they would wrestle. And but we grew up, to answer your question, we grew up as a fan, probably kind of like what you guys did,
Almost definitely. I mean, I've been a fan since I was a wee little boy, and that was a long time ago.
Well, and that's what I tell people. I just happened to be the young guy in the right place at the right time. Larry Mattisek and I shared a common goal in law enforcement. We became friends through that. And then, of course, he grew up under, like I said, Sam Muchnick, who was the NWA president for about 41 years, and worked side by side with Sam in the office, and learned the business, the ins and outs of it. And that's why he's written 5 books on the business now that's been top sellers. And through him, like I said, I got the honor of meeting probably, in my eyes, probably the greatest worker, the greatest guy in the business, Bruiser Brody, Frank Goodish. Frank and I had a good working relationship. I was one of the good promoters that never did screw him. When I told him what he was getting paid, it was there to the penny. And I'd tell the story. He'd walk in the dressing room and say, "Hey, boss, what do you want tonight?" And I'm sitting there thinking, here I am, this little independent promoter, and I got somebody that's larger than life. It's been all over the world. He's asking me what I'm wanting, and but we had some good shows together, and his wife and I, Barbara, still stay in contact. We talk daily on social media, and I've brought her in numerous times to our shows. We do in every May we do a Wrestling at the Chase reunion and a Bruiser Brody Memorial, and she's been in for a couple of them, and hopefully she'll make it in next year for us also.
Spectacular. What would you say has changed the most about being an independent promoter from the time you started until now? What's been the biggest change with the business? What's been the biggest change in the business?
The biggest business, the change has been when Vince McMahon turned it into a carnival, which he said he would do. I don't know if you guys remember, but when he took over, he basically said he would own everything and run everything, or else he'd turn it into a carnival, and he's done a darn good job of that. And then, of course, the oversaturation of television is what's really, I think, has hurt it. Our little television show that we do, we do old school. We have storylines. In fact, we just blew off a feud that we've been running 6 months between 2 of our independent guys. We had it there locally in our area, but then it went up to as far as Fort Wayne, Indiana. Company up there brought it up there and did a couple of matches, and But that storyline took us 6 months to blow off, and ended up blowing it off in a cage match, which I think is a lot of nowadays they don't have. You go out there, and I don't follow it a whole bunch anymore, unless I know Randy Orton is on. Randy, I was part of helping him have his first match over at South Broadway Athletic Club, where I was at. And, of course, his father, the Ace, works for us. He's our director of public affairs. He's at all of our shows. And so, I mean, I try to follow if I know Randy's involved. Of course, he's all hurt now, but I just think it's oversaturated. Really, no storyline that you can follow, and that's the big thing that's disappointing. Back growing up, you knew when Fritz von Erich and Cowboy Bob Ellis met for the first time on television, and then for the next 3 weeks during the television tapings, you knew to come Kiel Auditorium that housed 12,800 people that would sell out almost monthly. You knew you were going to see a big main event between a Fritz von Erich and a Cowboy Bob Ellis that you were going to remember for the rest of your life.
Now, it's really hard to believe that Vince McMahon would make a circus out of wrestling, since he had a clown, a repo man, a rooster, and a boogeyman all in the same era for the most part. And all kidding aside, he did really make it into more of a freak show circus more than anything for the longest time, which was one of the things that a lot of the true fans, like me and Mike here, did not really like that much.
Yeah, it kind of back to the sideshow.
Yeah, it kind of turns you off a little bit from it. But I got a few years on Mike here. I grew up watching the territories. I grew up in Tennessee, and Memphis wrestling was biggest thing there they had going on, followed by I want to say the Crockett promotion in the NWA, WCW. The biggest thing that I think we miss today is the mystique to the sport. There's no mystique to it no more. There's no guessing of what's going to happen. It's all out there on the internet, and I think the internet was one of the biggest things that kind of turned it around as well, as Vince McMahon doing his bit that he did. Now you got everybody out there at the shows with their cell phone cameras. They're taking pictures of guys on the road, eating at restaurants together, joking at the hotels or whatever, whereas you wouldn't have seen it before. That was unheard of.
Exactly. Well, and I got to tell you, a month and a half ago, I went down to Tennessee to see the match between Jerry Lawler and Terry Funk, because I've got Terry Funk coming in April of this coming year. Again, Terry worked for me back in the 80s, but I wanted to go down there. Terry invited me down, and so did Jerry, and went down there. Bert Prentice, a good friend of mine, a promoter for many, many years, does an excellent job in that area. Invited me down. So I went, and I got to tell you, there was a lot of good talent that he had on his card. I'm not going to knock that. But out of the 9 matches I think they had on the card, Terry Funk and Jerry Lawler went out there and did about an 8 or 9 minute old school match that just stole the whole night. Because they told the story from the time they walked out from behind the curtain. They didn't have to go in there and do all these high spots and all the flipping and flopping. And so, again, that's the pros. And that's something the business has lost now. You got all these places say, oh, well, we got a training school. Well, you can have the school. You can hang a shingle out there, but you got to have somebody in there that knows how to train. And until we get back to the basics, I did an interview the other day, and a gentleman asked me if I was Vince McMahon, with my show, my program being in the crapper, basically, what would I do to pull it out? Well, he owns quite a bit of libraries from all the territories from around the country. If I was him, I'd do kind of what like the SICW is doing, give him a little old with the new. There's so much material that he has sucked up over the years that he's got sitting in the library that fans are craving to see. And that's why we do with the St. Louis wrestling videos that we have. We show our weekly shows, and the people get to see, even though they may watch it way back when, they still remember the Ric Flair and Dick the Bruiser feud. And then after you see that, then you see a show of a couple of young guys that are out there busting their butt here locally, and someday they will be the legends in this business.
Well, you definitely you really hit on the head right there. And that Jerry Lawler-Terry Funk match, I didn't get to go to it. If I was still in Tennessee, I would have been there, no doubt. I'm in Florida now currently, but I'd heard that they did take the whole show basically because, it's Jerry Lawler territory too. They're pretty much through and through.
Sure.
They said that some of the younger guys got there and put on a great show, and they had just kind of felt bad for them in a way because the fans were into it, but they were just there mostly to see the legends. It seemed like, and
Yeah.
when the legends came out, they were all happy, and especially
Yeah.
when Lawler and Funk came out, and he pretty much left off or started off where he left off at. He got in Lance's face and was giving him down the road
Yeah.
for everything. So some things never
Yeah.
change, I guess. But you
No,
mentioned uh-huh.
that area down there, it will never change. And like I said, you knew they were going to draw a good crowd because, I mean, Jim Cornette was there, and Jim's been in Farming a couple times this last year. And
I love
he
Cornette.
wrote a nice article in that Spirit magazine that he writes for. I think it's from over in the UK, and he made us sound like we were the Vince McMahon of Southern Illinois, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But, the guys that we brought in, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, people like that, when I take them back to the hotel, they all sit there and they'll say, Herb, you got the best going on for what it used to be like. We're not trying to compete with anybody. In fact, I just got a call before I got on the phone with you guys. Another podcast voted us the best independent promotion in the country. That's an honor, to do it and then to be recognized by it. But it's like I tell them, it's not me. It's the guys I got working in the dressing room, Bob Orton to Larry Mattisek, and then all the legends that we're fortunate enough that I've met over the years to bring in. So we're just trying to keep all those old memories alive.
Now you mentioned
that's where I'm at a greater disadvantage than Chris is because I'm in the middle of nowhere, West Virginia. I'm the place that nowhere goes to get away from it all. I hadn't been to a independent promotion in years until about 8 or 9 months ago. We had one come over from Marietta, Ohio, and I took my wife. She's a fan too, and Bobby Eaton and Bobby Fulton were there, and Bobby Fulton actually had a match, and my wife picked up immediately that he was a professional, like that he was big. And she had no idea who he was, but she knew immediately when he hit the ring. And that just resonates what you just said, Herb, that the guys that have it, and you know it when you see it.
Oh yeah, and again, Bobby Eaton has been in and out of the St. Louis area. I loved Bobby Eaton years ago. People say, when are you going to bring Bobby Eaton in? Well, in Illinois, the athletic commission hasn't been in operation in years now, not like in Missouri. So every one of these backyard wrestling promotions that have opened up and said, we're going to be Vince McMahon in our own little community here, they bring Bobby Eaton in. Well, of course, then Bobby Eaton gets oversaturated, and so then when I try to bring him in to where, we usually have sellout crowds every month in our little place for our TV tapings, and I'll get Bobby to come in, but again, it's got to be at the right time and the right place. He's had some health issues, I understand, but I always loved Bobby, and in fact, I thought about when I had Cornette and just bringing them in together, but when you got to be able to give these fans what they want to see, and that's what we do at SICW. We listen to the fans. We're big on the social media. You can catch any of our tapes that we do on YouTube. We put them out there as well as on our little cable channel that we do. I just signed another year contract with the television company to keep it going. We've got right at 256 episodes in the can right now, which most independent promotions is unheard of. So we've got a good staff working, and then, of course, the great work that you guys do helping keep the word out there alive is what's keeping the wrestling part of it alive also.
That's definitely one of our goals. We like to, one thing we'd like to educate some of the younger fans today what they've missed in the past, so they can appreciate what they have now at least. I mean, some of these things they got going on now. You mentioned earlier it's a high spot or two, and then let's kick out at 2 and let's drag it on for a little bit longer, or they talk for 2 hours of a 3-hour show and give you a little bit of wrestling on top of it.
Well, our show we had last month was triple cage match that we had built up 3 separate feuds over the last 6, 7, 8 months. And of course, we have a demographic of ages from the young to the old. I got my oldest is about a 90-year-old lady that comes and sits in the front row, to the infants that the mothers and fathers are bringing with them. So when we started advertising these 3 triple cage matches, one of them being a title match that came down to Flash Flanagan, who was my champion, and the Tokyo Monster Cahagas, and Ron Powers, who grew up, worked with Bruce Brody, Dick Murdoch, and Greg Valentine. It was a 3-way match, which in St. Louis, a 3-way match years ago under the NWA, you never would hear of. But again, we had to give them a little mixture of the new. Right away, the younger audience was, they're going to have to climb over the top, and whoever gets down on the floor first is going to be the winner. And so, no, we advertised old school cage matches. There will be a winner. I never was a big fan of the cage matches of having to climb over and the first one gets on the floor wins, because I always thought to myself, if I want to get out, I'm just going to go over the door and climb out the door. Why do I want to climb up and go over to the top, And I was amazed that some of the young people come up and said, we really like this. Now we know why you went to the old school cage match. So, or when we do a Texas death match, which you can't do them all the time. We had one a year ago. A lot of fans, what's a Texas death match? Well, you give them a little history of it, and now they say, when can we have another one? Well, if I have a Texas death match every month, guess what? They don't mean anything.
That's right. And I tell you, if I turned on the television and I seen a strap match or a Russian chain match, I think I would probably fall over dead in my seat. They have nothing, no more creativity, it seems. It's all the same thing every week. They want to put the same people in the ring against each other every week, twice a week. And when I say it's pretty much the WWE. They're the mainstay on television that everybody gets to watch, because not everybody gets Ring of Honor or Lucha Underground or New Japan Wrestling, or I'm really hoping that the Jeff Jarrett promotion coming out here soon gets a good TV spot where we can see some of that.
I even sent a message to Jeff Jarrett and told him that I'd be more than glad to try to help him promote himself, his stuff on my program, because that's what it's all about. I mean, I have hopes for him. He hasn't got back with me yet that I've got a TV show that I can advertise anything on it that I want to. But to take you back, that I told you about the triple cage matches that we had. One match that we had, just to show you, and you mentioned a strap match. Over the last 6, 7 months that we were building that feud up, that's what we did. We told the story. We had the good guy and the bad guy, and the bad guy had his valet. She interfered for several matches, blah, blah, kept on interfering. We even handcuffed her one time. She managed to have her purse and have a little gimmick in there. But then we did a match where the heel kept on getting out of the ring, wouldn't stay in. So guess what? That led us up to having a leather strap match. The strap match went down. We got a semi win out of that with a gimmick. But that led us back into the finale, which was the cage match. And that's where we did the blow-off, and they blew the roof off of the place. And then we were smart enough at the end of that match to set up already for January the 16th of another feud that one of those guys are going to start with another one of my longtime workers, Gary Jackson, the Night Train, who's worked with the WCW, worked with WWF back in the day. So, I mean, we tell those stories, and it's just keep it going. And once you get the fans involved and listen to what they're telling you, and our crowds, if you ever go on YouTube and just hit up SICW Wrestling Explosion, I guarantee you that crowd will be from the opening bell until they walk out to go home.
Well, Herb, I have another question for you, and it pertains to young people that would like to break into the business as a wrestling talent. I mean, it seems like now every young high school boy, who didn't want to be a pro wrestler at that age, but they seem to have this idea that it's easy and they can just walk in somewhere and become famous. What advice would you give someone who was really serious about it?
Well, if somebody who is really serious about it, I would say, as I said earlier, there are all these promotions, especially in the St. Louis region area. The ones that you walk into the door and they say, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to train you and we're going to charge you $20 or $25. You need to turn around and walk back out the door. If you are really seriously thinking about getting into the business, there's a couple of them. Harley Race in Troy, Missouri now has got a great school that Harley puts on there. Harley and I have been friends for many, many years. I would recommend that any day. The second one that comes to my mind is my good friend Dory Funk Jr. If they may cost you more, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to get every bang for your buck, and you're going to get it from guys who have been where you're wanting to go. They're not going to shortcut you. They're not going to just take your money. They're going to tell you through the installation part of it, through the tryouts, whether they feel you got it or not. But these other promotions, like I said, you walk in the door and they say, we're going to work you hard and then we're going to get you your first free match. Those are the guys that are out there just looking to take your money, and they probably don't have the insurance to do it anyway. So I would say any young man or young lady out there that's wanting to get into that business, find you a legitimate, kind of like what Stu Hart used to do years ago up at the school up there, and he trained many of the tough guys who was in the business. Some of them are still out there today. They used to say when you pulled up in his driveway, if you didn't hear the screaming and the hollering coming from the basement, they weren't doing their job.
Another question would be, who do you think that these young people should look to in the past as examples? Like, if they wanted to see what it was to actually be a really good technical wrestler. I mean, YouTube is a great tool. That's how they're going to, a lot of people would find your promotion that didn't live in the St. Louis area. I didn't know anything about it, but I guarantee tonight I'm going to get on YouTube and I'm going to check it out. But what people from the past would you tell these young men and women to look at this? This is how it's done.
Yeah, well, and again, I tell a lot of the young people who approach me, before you really get into it, research, get on Google's, go on there and look up John Paul Henning, look at Pat O'Connor, and these are guys that are going back into the 50s and 60s, and then you can work your way up. Jack Briscoe, probably one of the all-time greats in the business. Technical wrestlers, Ted DiBiase, when he first came to St. Louis, probably one of the greatest when he got in that ring. Lou Thez. I mean, there was a guy that knew every technical move that's ever been invented, but he could also knock the heck out of you when it came down to it. And again, that's kind of the misconception that people have. Everybody, as you said, now knows wrestling is this and that, but you got to keep in mind there are guys out there that don't get along, and there are guys out there that promoters will intentionally put together just to see what's going to happen. I've been in that position once or twice in 40 years now myself, and I try to stay away from them. But get on the internet, because if it's not on the internet, then you can find anything on there. But yeah, guys like Pat O'Connor, Lou Thez, for the technical side of it. And then if you want it to be the big bad heel guy, then, depending on what territory they was in, Dick the Bruiser, the Crusher, Baron Von Raschke, who's a good friend of ours, has been in lots of times for us. And in fact, I hope to bring him in again this year coming up for our anniversary show. And there's just so much you can learn out there by just watching it. And it's what's really amazing me is some of the young guys that come to us and want to try out, they'll come in and they'll say, boy, I watched the match the other night between Jerry Blackwell and so-and-so up from the AWA. Well, at least that's telling me you're taking the initiative to it. At least watch some of that so I know you're interested.
Oh, yeah, and, Jerry Blackwell and Bruiser Brody in the AWA had some great feuds with each other, too, that they could really enjoy watching.
the only wrestling show that was ever produced at the Fox Theater in St. Louis, the historical Fox Theater, we produced. Larry Matysek and I did, and we had Bruiser Brody, Crusher Blackwell, Kamala the Ugandan Giant, the Fantastics at that time, Gentleman Chris Adams, Spike Huber. We had an all-star card on that. That was back in 1987.
You know, it's funny. I get people who have messaged me on here asking me, "Am I the same Chris Adams that used to wrestle?" And of course, I tell them yes. But no, I'm just kidding. I tell them no.
Yeah,
actually, you know, he's
Gentleman Chris Adams. Yes, he was. It's a shame he's not with us anymore, but you know, you live your life and you have to pay the consequences.
That was one of my favorites growing up too, just because the name alone, if anything, you know.
I can imagine. Yes.
I've got a bit of a two-part question for you here. Okay. You mentioned earlier you've worked with Randy Orton a little bit. I was wondering how many other talents over the years have you worked with that have made it to the big time already? And to kind of go over the top of Mike's question from earlier, what kind of advice would you give to the young athletes who are already in the Indies right now that want to make the larger rosters like your Ring of Honor or WWE?
Well, you know, the guys that we've worked with, I mean, depending on what you mean, have made it to big time. Ron Powers is the guy that worked with, like I said, he went to Japan with Brody. He went to Puerto Rico with Brody. He was in Texas. He was with the WCW. In fact, if you go on and Google Ron Powers, you'll see him in there against Paul White, people like that. So did Ron ever make it to the WWE? Well, to me, the WWE may just be in name what they call the mainstay, because they're basically the only game in town, but a lot has changed with them. Those guys don't get paid nowhere near what they used to back in the WWF days. But my thing is, Ron Powers, Gary Jackson, he was the guy that Larry Matysek always wanted to tag team with Coco Beware because they look so much alike. They were the same height, same charisma in the ring. In fact, when we brought Coco in this past year, we got pictures of him and Gary in the ring together. And seeing Gary's another one. He was on television wrestling Kamala the Ugandan Giant. Gary's the type of guy that always carried his work clothes with him, his trunks and that. And when he go to these shows, he'd tell the booker or the promoter, "Hey, I'm here if you need me." And that's how he got to be known around the world himself. So yeah, there's been guys like that have come through us, and the amazing part of it, they're still here with us working with SICW. And I think what I would tell the guys that want to make the ROHs, which between you and I probably have watched one or two, maybe three of their shows. In fact, when they come to our area once a year, that's kind of what they think of the area. They want to fly in and steal a show and go back out. Well, Larry Matysek and I helped them. In fact, Larry helped cut some of the promos for him for that show. I went to their first TV taping in Chicago. Jim Cornette invited me up there when he was with them. So again, I mean, their type of show is not what I grew up on and not what I promote now. So if there are young people out there that want to get to the ROH level or the TNAs or them, study some of the matches. But if you really want to learn the fundamentals, start looking back into the 60s, 70s, early 80s, and just watch how like I said, the Ted DiBiase's, the Dory Funk Juniors, Mike Graham, people like that, Dusty Rhodes. Dusty go out there and just brawl and could wrestle. He preferred to brawl more than anything, but they told the story. And I think you said it earlier, you get on there, I don't think anybody kicks out at the count of one anymore. Everybody waits for the count of two, except for SICW. I tell them, not all of you wait until the count of two to kick out, especially when you've been in a match for 2 or 3 minutes and somebody's trying to get a pin on you. You can't be that wore out that you can't kick out at one. So they think the referees only know how to count to two,
I had just a quick question for you on something that just sprung to mind to me here. Back in the days we're talking about, you would see people with finishing moves that would not be kicked out of at all, and they were just simple moves. The Rock and Roll Express with the double drop kick, Jerry Lawler off the second rope with the little fist drop, or Hulk Hogan with his leg drop. And it seemed like some of these things were just so simple, but when it was hit, you knew that 3 count was coming. Well, if you in the product today, you see people throwing their finishers on them midway through the match, and they're getting kicked out of at a 2.5 count, like this guy's indestructible or something. I mean,
Sure.
and is that good for it in your opinion? Is it good for wrestling that they put a match on like that where they're constantly kicking out of their finishers now, or is it better to have like it was when the bad guy or the good guy, whoever it may be, puts that finishing move on you, the match is over with at that point?
Oh yeah, and the only time that is good is when you're blowing off a match or a feud, and you've got a 60-minute time limit, and you've got two guys in there that's going to go to 58, 59 minutes of that 60-minute match, and that's where you do the reversals. But back in the day, I know you probably don't remember the name John Paul Henning, used a maneuver called the bow and arrow. When John Paul Henning clamped the bow and arrow on you, that was it. The bell was going to be ringing. Or look back to when Nature Boy Buddy Rogers put the figure four on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Even when Ric Flair used the figure four. Nowadays, what happens, somebody puts the figure four on you, and it can be a jabroni, and he reverses it on Ric Flair. Doesn't mean anything anymore.
No.
And that's what I think the basics has been lost. I blame the script writers now for the WWE. We tell our guys, go out there if you got and how many matches do you see anymore that's won with a finishing move? Not many.
Not many at all.
SICW. No, back in the day, Baron von Raschke, he won a lot of his matches with the Iron Claw. Fritz von Erich won a lot of them with the Brain Claw. And look at how that feud, if you guys remember that, how they started working, whose claw was the most superior.
Mm-hmm.
That we've got that tape from the Baron describing why his Brain Claw was superior over the Iron Claw. So if you ever go on the SICW website, you'll see that interview on there. And one of the best promos you ever believe, coming from Baron von Raschke.
I do remember that, actually. That is during my time when I watched television, wrestling on TV, I should say. They had a lot of great promos back in that day. You had a lot of great talkers. Dusty Rhodes was a great talker. He would keep your attention on the mic. It's like there was nobody better than him almost when it comes to it. But you had superstar Billy Graham and people like him as well. But talking is like a lost art today, if anything was. There's not many great promo people.
And Chris, the difference between then and now, and Larry Matysek tells this all the time, when he was going to do a promo with, say, Dick Murdoch, they'd be in the ring, and he'd tell them while they was away for a commercial break, he'd say, we got 2 minutes, get yourself over and get the next date over at Kiel Auditorium, and I'll tap you on the leg when we're within 30 seconds. And there was no script. Nobody gave you a piece of paper saying, learn this before you go out there. These guys could do it. Bruiser Brody, one of the best in the business of doing promos. He knew what to get over, how to get it over, and it was just it's an art that is lost right now because we got the script writer sitting up there saying, okay, before you get to the next town, this is what you got to say. This is what you got to do. The stuff of breaking away to commercial and joining it. Come on, I hate to say that the fans cannot be that gullible to think that while the commercial breaks away, those guys are still sitting there wrestling.
Yeah, and the ones who have been allowed to talk, Mike, you can verify this for me because you've been watching all the current stuff with me as well. The ones today who are allowed to be themselves and talk, it seems like are the ones that are most successful. Because I'm pretty sure after Stone Cold busted out with that Austin 316 line, I don't think a lot of his stuff was exactly scripted. I think he just flew off the heel at people, and whatever he had to say, he said. And I think a few others were allowed to be more themselves than what the script said. And in that case...
And
that happened... Good.
And we definitely, as fans, Chris, have seen that the art form of talking in the promo is gone, but it's not because the fans don't crave it. Because you and I personally have experience with the craze on Facebook now of promo e-feds, where normal people just go on and they make personas and they cut promo matches against each other. It's because that as fans, it's something that they're not getting, that they still want, so they're doing it themselves.
Well, and you're right. The promos, guys like Stone Cold had the flexibility there, where when he was putting the butts in the seats, Vince wasn't going to challenge him. So yeah, that kind of stuff. I mean, it was kind of like back in the NWA days there in St. Louis. If you look at any of those tapes that we put out there now, Larry and I actually reproduced the 12 different volumes of them that are still out there. There were only certain workers that Sam Muchnick would say, you can get out of the ring and do your rough stuff. Not everybody was allowed to do that. You know, Dick the Bruiser, Harley Race, Bruiser Brody. If you seen them getting out of there, they were setting up something for another big night coming up down the road. But nowadays, I mean, everybody gets out of the ring. Everybody wants to hit somebody with a chair or a ladder. You know, that was the other thing that always amazes me. You know, why do we have the ladders underneath the rings? Why do we have these tables underneath the ring? You know, or why do you have the trash cans underneath the ring? Again, I know it's entertainment, but again, I'm kind of like what you guys said earlier. The mystique has kind of been lost. You know, back to that feud I was telling you about, the two gentlemen we had, Curtis Wilde and our Canadian hero Sean Vincent. They had told me, they said, you know, we're going to have, leading up to this cage match, we're going to have a hardcore match. I said, no, we didn't have hardcore matches back in St. Louis back then. Ad lib. The spot that stole the night on the card is when Sean Vincent picked up this typical plastic trash can that was sitting over in a corner full of soda cups and popcorn bags, and when he dumped it on Curtis's head. But if they'd have drug a trash can in and put it underneath the ring, people knows what it is then. So the mystique, that's what we try to do. We try to keep the mystique there and the surprise of it. And when you've got the crowd as they're walking out the door saying, Herb, I don't know how you're going to top this next time, that makes you really feel good.
Chris, I've got one more question, if you don't mind, for Herb.
Hey, go right ahead.
With the recent movie Concussion coming out and the bringing forth of the chronic traumatic encephalopathy, had that changed the business with that coming to the forefront in the last few years?
Well, I think that you've seen more injuries, and I think you're seeing guys out there that are trying to take advantage of certain elements of what takes place. I mean, look at the Abdullah the Butcher issue, and I'm sure you're aware of what happened with him in the lawsuit. So there are a certain percentage of workers or wannabe workers out there that's going to try to take advantage of anything they can. I think, you know, these guys go out there and give it 110%. I've had a couple of my guys, you know, get injured over the years. The one guy, the Canadian hero, Sean Vincent, suffered a neck injury, just a freak accident. Ended up, you know, being out for a while. So it happens. Do they want it to happen? No, I don't think there's one of them wants to get in there and get a concussion or get a dislocated knee or arm or whatever, but it's going to happen. I don't think it's so much interfered with what's going on in the business, at least not on my side of it.
And you know, you mentioned hardcore a moment ago. Back when I was younger, hardcore meant that somebody come running out of the back of the studio during someone's interview and, you know, hit them in the head with a chair or a street sign or something, whatever they could pick up on the way to the ring, if they were tired of hearing them run their mouth about them. And it expanded from there to maybe going back to the, you know, the concession stand brawls like you'd seen back in the day. There was one in Mississippi that was pretty big in the Memphis days, I believe. But the stuff they have today, it has escalated past what ECW was, which was pretty extreme, going through 3 tables, a table lit on fire, whatever the case may be. But if you look on YouTube, you see these guys doing these crazy, crazy matches where I've seen people power bombed on cinder blocks that are lit on fire. What possible thing do you have to gain from that as a wrestler, that you would let someone else do that to you? I mean, certainly that can't push you forward to the spotlight by having something that extreme done to your body. I mean, you're not going to last long either if you continue doing stuff like that.
No. I mean, what promoter in his right mind would even want somebody like that? And that's why we don't even use the word hardcore. Like I said, those two guys wanted to have one that said, nope, they didn't do them in St. Louis, and this is what we're going to tell the story here tonight, and it will work. Listen to what the guys like Bob Orton and Larry Mattisek and Herb Simmons have got, 100 years of experience and knows what these fans want to see here tonight. And they listen to us, and it worked. You're right. I don't want to see somebody being pile drived on a cinder block. I tell them, get in the ring and show the fans what you know how to do. If every match, everybody's out of the ring, hitting everybody with chairs, doing all kinds of crazy things, it just don't mean anything. I'll tell you a real quick story. Bruiser Brody, Abdullah the Butcher, probably one of the longest running feuds of ever. And, we booked them several different times over the years back in the early 80s. And there was another promoter in St. Louis that got a hold of us and said, hey, we want to book them. Can you get us? So Larry Mattisek made the arrangements. We get them booked. They go over there. They're going to be the main event. 5-6 matches before, everybody's out there, with chairs. They're throwing fire. They're doing all kinds of things. And I'll never forget, Brody went to the promoter, a young guy, grabbed him by the collar of his shirt, held him up, his feet was off the ground, and said, look, if I see one more chair shot or if I see one more fireball being thrown, we're going to go out there and we're going to destroy this place, and it's going to be over with. But before I do, I want my money. Because what do you follow? What do you follow up if everybody's out there doing what those guys have done across the world, and what fans are coming to see? Because, first of all, what they were doing was unbelievable. There's chair shots, and then there's a Bruiser Brody chair shot. So, again, hardcore, I mean, I never was into the ECW. Tommy Dreamer, Sabu, you're right, that was all extreme stuff. But to me, what I call old school wrestling, that didn't fit into that. Again, I'm not knocking it because I know there's fans out there that's going to disagree, and that's one of the good things, that we can have our differences and our opinions, and we can talk about it and agree to disagree.
Right. I was just thinking earlier, those videos I've seen seem to have a big fan following there when they happen, and you got guys getting light bulbs busted in their mouth. They got tacks in their head. They're being body slammed on a ring full of thumbtacks. Or I actually witnessed one video of a guy having a firecracker lit off on his hands or something. Like he was handcuffed to the turnbuckle, and a firecracker stuffed right in between his arms or something and lit and popped on him. I can't imagine that.
The scary thing is there are fans out there that enjoy that, and more power to them. I just don't think that's telling the story. People like Sam Muchnick would turn over in his grave if he, of course, Sam would turn over in the grave if somebody played music coming out. Back at Kiel Auditorium, 12,800 fans, like I said, would pack that place. And you guys have probably never been at a Kiel Auditorium, but they had the big stage and the big black curtain. When a Johnny Valentine or Gene Kiniski or whoever, all they had to do is walk out from behind that curtain and walk down that aisle to the ring. They didn't need music. And I tell people all the time, everybody says, Hulk Hogan, the Hulk Hogan this. Well, what made Hulk Hogan was the movie, Rocky, and the Eye of the Tiger theme song. I used to tell them I could come out from behind that curtain when I weighed 500 pounds to the Eye of the Tiger, and people would applaud for me. And that's
the music's more of a marketing point, really. It's more of a marketing thing,
That's it, exactly. and I understand these young guys feel that they got to have the music to be identified with, but yeah, and we play the music at the show, but it's not on our television show because, we've got a 30-minute program, even though the cable company wants us to go to an hour. Like I told them, you got to crawl before you walk. So I'm thankful for the sponsors that I got helping me with it, because that's the other thing. There's no money in the independent wrestling business. Larry Matisek and I and the people who help us out in the dressing room, we're doing it for the passion of it, to keep it alive. Larry and I always said if we can make enough to go to Steak and Shake and get a steak burger after a show, we're happy with it. We at least feel that we're keeping the history of what in St. Louis was for many, many years. Because, St. Louis was the hotbed. Everybody says, well, Texas, the Carolinas, and everybody had their own little, back when it was 40-something different territories going on.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody believed that theirs was the niche. And I'm kind of partial to St. Louis because, one, I'm from the region here on the Illinois side, but anybody who was going from the East Coast to the West Coast to wrestle wanted to stop in St. Louis and work for Sam Muchnick at Chase Park Plaza. That was the elite. They were so used to working in one-room arenas and horse barns and things like that to come to work in the elite Chase Park Plaza Hotel. Everybody that's ever done an interview that worked in St. Louis will tell you the Chase was the place to be, and they all raved about it.
Definitely, you're right about one thing. It definitely depends on where you grew up at. Everybody had their own thoughts on it. There's no way you can tell anybody in Dallas, that the NWA was better than Dallas was. The Von Erichs were the top draw, and nobody could beat the Von Erichs. And when someone come in and did beat the Von Erichs, then the roof come down. So it's all about where you're at.
I got a trivia question for you. Do you know where Kevin Von Erich was born at?
Where he was born at?
Yes.
I do not know.
Yeah, about 10 minutes from where I live in Illinois, Belleville, Illinois.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah. Go on and Google him and it'll tell you.
The biggest thing I remember about the Von Erichs, well, not the biggest thing, but I mean I guess the strangest thing was when they tried bringing in Lance Von Erich, saying he was a cousin or something, and he didn't even fit the look. He didn't have the same charisma about him or nothing. Then it got let out he wasn't really a Von Erich. They just tried to put it over, and that didn't help matters any at all back in the day. I think that's where they were kind of on the, I don't know if I want to say the downside really, but I mean they weren't really on top of their game either at that point anymore.
Well, I remember Gary Hart because Bruiser Brody had introduced me to Gary, and I remember having a conversation back at that time when Lance was being brought in to try to fill a hole, and Gary was not a big proponent of that. That was the other thing. A lot of fighting and feuding between Gary Hart and Fritz Von Erich back in the day.
Well, Gary Hart was a good wrestling mind as well. Mike, Mike, is there any more questions you might have for Herbert today, or are you kind of tapped out on us?
I'm tapped out at this point, Chris.
All right. I don't want to leave. I didn't want to leave you out or anything. You know what I mean? I got to make sure I get you in there.
He got tired of hearing me talk. That's what it was.
No. Oh, no. Like Mike says, when it comes to wrestling, we can probably talk on that long, but I don't want to keep you running all night. But I know you got things you got to do, and also, if you could, just leave us with a little bit of something about what you got going on. I know you mentioned you've got your SICW. You're on YouTube. Hopefully, people will check that out. Like Mike said, I know we are now that we know it's there, because we're always wanting something different than what we got. And you talk about a good old-style wrestling. That's the thing I love to watch. So I'm definitely going to check it out myself. Is there anything you got coming up soon that you got going to be live in different places? Or?
Yeah, we start off the next year on January the 16th in East Frontenac, Illinois, where we do our monthly show and our TV tapings there. But we're really big into helping the first responders, the fire departments, police, EMS raise funds. So we've got a few of them lined up throughout next year again already, some repeat business. So we run anywhere between 12, or anywhere from 12 to 20 shows a year. We do our monthly show, like I say, with our TV tapings, and then the other road shows that we put in there. they can catch us on, like I said, SICW Wrestling Explosion, or I'm on Facebook. They call me the guru of Facebook. If somebody's been listening and want to go on there, just look up for Herb Simmons out of East Carondelet, Illinois, and send me a friend request. And if you're a wrestling fan, then I'll accept it, because, like I said, we can talk wrestling all night long. And but I really appreciate the job that you guys do, and your passion for it, because that's what's keeping it alive.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on the show tonight with us, Herb, but we'd love to have you on again sometime. That's all right with you later down the road.
Sure.
And
yeah, just call me, and maybe I can hook up Larry Matisek. And if you want to hear a guy that's got some history and can tell you some stories, Larry's really the guy.
That would be great. That'd be great too.
This guy can tell you who was the partners in the. He can tell you the feuds, the trouble with the promotions. And you got to remember, he grew up under Sam Muchnick, but then he worked for Vince McMahon for 10 years.
Now he's the one that calls the shows, like the Lance Russell of the area, right? Like I grew up watching Memphis, and Lance Russell was the man there, and Gordon Solie the man in Atlanta.
Well, Larry actually started for Vince McMahon fresh out of school, writing the magazine, the monthly magazine for Wrestling at the Chase. And he used to call in the results to the local radio stations. But then just kind of grew on Sam. Sam gave him a job, and then he started working in the office, doing anything that Sam needed done, and then eventually ended up being the ring announcer for many years, and then he took over as the play-by-play, as you said, like Lance Russell did. Him and then Mickey Garagiola, who was the brother to Joe Garagiola, who Joe was the first play-by-play announcer on Wrestling at the Chase in 1959. And then he went on to bigger and better things, Good Morning America, and then St. Louis Cardinal Catcher. And so a lot of history in St. Louis with wrestling, I'll tell you. But yeah, Larry, then he went to work for Vince with the WWF for 10 years. And then while he was working for them is when him and I was actually promoting these independent shows on the side with the likes of, like I said, Brody and Blackwell and people like that.
Well, that would definitely be nice. We'd love to talk to him as well. Sure. I mean, him, or if any of your guys want to come on and promote themselves or promote the shows they're going to, that's always acceptable as well. Like I said, we all like talking wrestling here, so it's all great. So, once again, I want to thank you for coming on with us tonight, and we look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Very good. I appreciate it. You guys have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, sir.